Paul, we have a.
Actually, just so you know, there's a few fellows on here, that's actually me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Nice
I'm just in the Zoom.
to Pete to join us.
Well, good evening. It's 7:02. We're gonna call the regular meeting of the Braintree Planning Commission to order. My name is Nathan Cleveland. I'm the chair of the Planning Commission. To my right, our other Planning Commission members, Paul Kendall, Jackson Evans, and Malcolm Fitzpatrick is here as well. We also have our consultant who we've been working with on the zoning bylaw update from Two Rivers Ottaquechee Regional Commission, Kyle Katz. He's over here on the left. And our other planning commission member, Malcolm, is coming in. We have a sign-in sheet. If you have not already done so, please sign in. This is a regular scheduled meeting of the Braintree Planning Commission. And so we have a few other items to get to before we get into the warned public hearing on the draft zoning bylaws that we've been working on. Thank you all for joining us tonight. We will be looking to take comments through the public hearing process. Once we get into that, I will outline kind of the process we would like to follow as far as taking comments from the public as well as individuals from the planning commission that have some additional comments that they would like to make as part of the public hearing. But the first order of business tonight is to approve the minutes from our August 21st planning commission meeting. So
Nathan, just a question. At some point, we should be approving the agenda. And I don't know whether that comes before or after the minutes, but I'll.
So are there any changes to the agenda that the planning commission would like to make at this point?
Move its acceptance.
Okay,
Did you take a public comment on that, or?
sure. Why not?
I just, typically, in this case, there's two public hearings. And you warn the public hearing for the zoning change, then you would close that, then you would go to your regular agenda.
Yeah, so first of all, we have our regular planning commission meeting, and as part of that, the public hearing is part of the regular agenda item, and that's number 3 on our list of things
Yeah, I
to do
understand
tonight,
that,
and so we'll open
You
that.
would still wanna open the public hearing forum and then close it.
Yeah,
It's not an agenda item, because this appears that this is what it's advertised as an agenda item on your planning commission.
yeah,
When
and
it's two different hearings. It's two different.
And
And then after that,
and
there's two that go to the planning commission. You have your first one, then you warn your second one, and then there's one that goes to the third. That's where the public gets. This looks like it's gonna be moved tonight.
so
By the
there's
way, it's on the agenda.
only one public hearing required for the planning commission. And then
We also had two, and ran up like Two Rivers Ottaquechee.
but
we had a public
Here,
forum
one
back
required.
in January, but by statute, the planning commission is required to have one.
Okay.
We can choose to have a second one after tonight if we don't vote these draft zoning bylaws forward to pass
Okay.
on to the select board. So we could have a second one if the
Okay.
planning, yes, you're.
All right, that's good. It just seemed
Definitely
like
correct.
we're gonna
It's an
It's
option.
gonna be like we're moving it on, we don't.
It's a potential for us to move on tonight, and that is ultimately the goal, Paul, is for us to take under consideration the comments that we received tonight. And if
But
there-
that's still what they wanna have two public hearings, so the public gets their two chances, and then you guys.
the select board will have their public hearing as well.
Okay. Well, I
So
mean-
that would be the second required public
Okay.
hearing that we have, but we,
So we'll go to them and see if they
correct,
make any changes.
yes.
Okay.
Yes, so whatever we forward on to them,
Mhm.
they have the opportunity to make changes between their public hearing.
That's our last opportunity then.
Um,
I mean,
Kyle,
the only opportunity.
Yeah, so once the
Kyle from Two Rivers.
Hi, Kyle
Yes,
Katz,
need to defer to them.
I'm a regional planner at the Rivers Ottaquechee Regional Commission. And yes, once the select board holds their hearing, following the hearing, if substantial changes are made, then we need to warn a new hearing.
Mhm.
I do think that towns with a larger population are required to hold more hearings. So
I
it
think it's
could
by
be-
state statute, actually.
It could
be
be
honest
that
with
in
you.
Randolph, you're required to have two planning commission hearings. I can't recall in statute right now,
Mhm.
but, towns with were considered rural towns, they're required to just have one planning commission hearing.
This just sort of leads me to believe that this is just moving on tonight without a lot more comment from people. The way that it's advertised, but that's just my own opinion.
I think the intent, just to follow up on your comments, Paul, is for us to take into consideration all public comments.
Okay.
And then if the planning commission chooses to, they can vote the draft as it's proposed right now on
Goes
to
to
the
select.
select board. But there is no definite yes or no. We are moving this forward. It's all based on what we hear tonight
Okay.
and what the majority of the planning commission chooses to do as we move forward. So yes, you will definitely take this under consideration.
I appreciate it. It was just a question of mine on process. Is
Definitely.
that how we had done?
No, it's good to clarify that before we jump into it, because we just have the
Because you usually have to advertise the public for hearing different than the agenda.
We did.
Okay,
Mhm.
all right. I haven't seen any of
This is in
that.
the paper on the 28th. It's been posted around
Okay.
town.
All right,
Yeah, on the website. so-
okay, yeah, I haven't seen, I don't get out very much anymore, so.
You can prove it.
Website, I think, yeah.
yeah. And if there's questions, we're happy to provide that documentation to show that when it was published, as far as the public notice and where it was published and at the times. And as far also as being a neighbor of ours, the town of Randolph would receive a copy of that notice as well, and we have documentation of us sending it out to our neighboring communities per statute.
And I assume Two Rivers already featured the regional plan, this meets the regional plan too, so you folks are gonna have to adopt it too.
We don't know, this is just
Yes.
local zoning.
Yeah, but eventually you're going to. As
No,
part of the
to
regional
adopt.
plan, or-
No, that's not how
no.
it goes. This is not the town plan. This is the zoning bylaws. So like the town plan has to conform with the regional town plan.
Mhm.
The zoning bylaws have to conform with state statutes, and that was the goal of it. And it has to be in line with the town plan, yes. So the town plan helped guide us in the discussion, but we'll jump into that
Yeah,
in the
that's
public hearing. So if we can. If there are other public comments, we'd be happy to hear those now, and then we can dive into some of those details during the public hearing of the draft zoning bylaws.
Did we move to approve the agenda as
We had
I moved it.
a motion, but I need a second, please.
second?
Motion and second. Is there any additional discussion to approve the agenda as proposed? Hearing none, all in favor? Motion passes. Next on our agenda tonight is to approve the minutes from August 21st, 2025, regular planning commission meeting.
I move their acceptance as distributed.
Do I have a second on the motion?
I.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Motion passes. I will now open the public hearing on the Braintree draft zoning bylaws. And just open with a couple of housekeeping items here. We would like to be able to take comments from the public and allow everybody an opportunity to speak, so we have an hour that we've scheduled for this, but we don't need to limit ourselves to an hour discussion. If we get to a point where there is needed clarification from the planning commission, we'll provide that, but this is an opportunity for us to hear public comments and take those under advisement. So we're not going to be responding directly to these comments. We will take them under advisement. And I would like to give everybody the opportunity to speak one at a time. So please don't overspeak other people. And for the planning commission, please allow everybody the opportunity to finish what they're saying before we move on to the next individual. It'd be really great if everybody could just raise their hand if they have a comment to make, so I can recognize them and allow them the opportunity to speak. At the end of receiving comments, I will allow the planning commission the opportunity to discuss the comments that we've received as they pertain to the draft plan that we're under consideration tonight. As I mentioned earlier, it's the intent of the planning commission to be able to vote on the draft zoning bylaw and pass it along by statute to the select board for their consideration and adoption. There is an opportunity for changes to be made between now and the select board's consideration of these zoning bylaws. So this is by no means the final ultimate draft that will be voted on by the select board. I would like Kyle Katz, who's been our advisor and consultant throughout the process from the Two Rivers Ottaquechee Regional Commission, to just help lay the land of how we got here as far as the adoption process and what needs to follow, and how the planning commission will proceed at the end of the public hearing tonight. So like you have a good kind of line of operation here.
Yeah, so if I recall, the planning commission, and Two Rivers, we've been assisting on this, began, working on the draft bylaw in winter of 2024. So it's about a 1.5-year process so far, perhaps a little more. The planning commission has put in a ton of time and effort, and, this is a full revamp, if you will, with a mindset to really simplify.
It was the fall of 2023, not
Sorry.
2024.
2023, and to really simplify the bylaws and make them more user friendly. A lot of the work, not all of it, but a lot of the work is centered around housing and facilitating the permitting process for new housing. So essentially with the process, the planning commission has gone through the entire bylaw. They've made changes throughout. A public forum was held back in January. And this is the first public hearing. The planning commission is required to hold one. But there's no limit to how many public hearings can be held. Following this point, the planning commission can make any and all changes, based on comments at this hearing or general corrections, technical things that come up. At which point, when they're ready to send the draft onto the select board, they'll have a transmittal draft that will go to the select board. And at that point, the select board has, well, following, if this is the last hearing, there's a 1-year period at which the draft needs to be adopted by the select board. So there will be a ticking clock, and a year is a long time, but I've seen it run out. So you don't want to wait too long. Following the select board hearing, the select board can choose to adopt at any point in a publicly warned meeting. Did I cover all that? Do you want me to go more into detail on the content, or just comment at this point, Nathan?
Yeah, I think a quick overview of some of the big pieces that we tried to tackle. Process was one of the things as far as application intake and as far as looking at the future land use. But if we have a kind of a summary of those changes that Kyle has done, and if you could just do some of the bullet points for us, so we could outline those right now. And then we'll move into the actual public comment period of the public hearing. Thank you.
Right, so as I mentioned, a lot of the work really focused on housing, and with that said, some of the changes are statutory. So looking at bringing the accessory dwelling unit language up to the state standards, which, for those of you who may not know, accessory dwelling units are essentially granny flats. They're small, about 30% of the square footage of the residence, or 900 square feet. There's also been a provision included for adaptive reuse, so taking old structures that may not be used for their intended purpose now and converting those to housing. then there's a housing conversion provision that's included, and this really just simplifies the process for taking currently multifamily structures like a 2-unit dwelling or a 3-unit dwelling, smaller multifamily, and allowing for an additional unit to be added without going through site plan review, conditional use approval, things like that. Then I think the biggest map change is the addition of the neighborhood residential district, which extends west from South Braintree. And is really focused on smaller lot sizes and residential development. So those are the big housing changes. You mentioned a process-oriented changes to simplify the bylaw for the administrator and for the development review board. And then we've also made some small tweaks to the flood hazard area regulations that are also embedded within the bylaw. And then finally, looking at incorporating driveway standards, having a maximum slope, required width, so people aren't doing anything crazy.
And I think the other thing that we really attempted to do as part of this rewrite in the draft that we have in front of us right now is to comply with the recently updated town plan that we did and try to meet some of the goals and action items that were included in there, which included identifying areas for village center designation and identifying places where the town could pursue a specific state designation to support housing and compact development in areas of traditional development here in the town of Braintree. But also at the same time conserving some of the areas that were high priority as far as maintaining the characteristics of our town as well. And we've taken into consideration throughout this process a number of comments that we have received both in writing and in our regular planning commission meetings. And so that is a result, as a result of all those comments, we have in front of us the draft zoning bylaws. So does planning commission have anything else they would like to add at the beginning of the public hearing before we open it up for public comments? Okay. So
Part of the housing too was to address the affordability of living in communities too. It wasn't just the ADUs and the adaptive reuse, but it's to make it more affordable for somebody to build and create housing here.
I would think-
As a goal,
In a way,
well,
zoning,
that's ultimately what we should be doing.
right, but zoning doesn't really get to the heart of affordability. Zoning can help. So.
Or can worsen.
Or it can worsen, so you can require, oh, you actually need 5 acres to build a house on that. Well, that's expensive. But if you reduce that lot size in an area that's already has good road access, it's already has some density. That can allow for more affordability, but zoning directly doesn't create that affordability. You have to kind of find ways to allow for a housing that could be more affordable.
But if you implement things with the new road standards, it's more expensive to build a house. That's affordable.
So, I will just try to make a clarification here when we're asking for public comment, rather than put forward questions, if you could put forward something that we could consider. So you're saying that,
Oh, no, it's just, there were 3 things to the housing, what the issues are in the state of Vermont. And I agree with the 2, but I'm just saying that we should consider affordability, that's just a comment,
Okay.
it's not a question.
okay, so.
That's the way I
yeah.
see it as a resident of the state of Vermont.
And at
Someone
the
practice.
close of the public hearing, what we're going to do is review the public hearing comments that we're receiving. And so at that point, the planning commission will try to respond as appropriate if needed. So affordability as far as drafting the zoning bylaws is something that we need to have on our list of things to come back to. And I'll just tell you, Paul, right now that that was definitely a consideration.
Oh, no, I
As
just
we
wish it would
went
be.
forward,
It's a big problem in
definitely.
Vermont,
Yeah, and we can talk a little bit about some of the things that I think was considered
Mhm.
when we were drafting the bylaws, to give you a little bit of background of
Mhm.
what we think would help with that affordability piece and make things more predictable and uh, just really the quick piece of that is being more predictable about the process of whether or not you have to go to the DRB or get an administrative permit. You know, trying to clarify the process of what is permitted versus what's not.
Hmm.
And trying to be much more clear on that. So, definitely, I'm just trying to make notes of these public comments and we'll try to dive into some of those a little bit more as we allow more of the discussion to happen. So, did you have anything else you wanted to
Well, I do
add?
have a number of things, but I was wondering if we could start, we had a public meeting back in January. And I've read through the documents, and I'm not really sure if I see a lot of the comments reflected in this document.
Mhm.
And we'd like to hear what you guys did take up, what you did change in the document. From the January public hearing, because
I think the appropriate approach, Paul, would be for you to ask.
well, it was big comment, but I just, if you could
Specifically,
give us a synopsis, what you listened to.
I mean, this is not intended as a hearing for us to be defending what we have done.
No,
It is to hear public comment.
Mhm,
So I think if you wish to make public comment,
mhm.
you can make public comment, but we're not supposed to enter into a dialogue or debate at this point. Yeah, okay.
And yeah, we can definitely, that's clearly another thing that we can address as well, is how did we consider the comments that we received during the public hearing?
That's my-
public forum?
I think it's,
I mean,
Fair
would that be
question.
appropriate then? Because if you approve it tonight, then that, you guys don't have any obligation to actually tell us that.
this could be moved tonight.
Mhm.
And it seems like that's what it's gonna
I mean,
happen.
I know I saw the list of that was created from that, but beyond that, I never saw it. Some of those items were never even checked. There was nothing on them or anything in the document I saw. It was just that it was a list of things, action items. And then I never saw a single thing. There was some things maybe in the minutes here and there, but it was nothing like fully addressing like the comment list. Or like why your decision to ignore something from the comments of that meeting or not. And not saying that's relevant tonight, because obviously this is public comment, but I mean, I guess that would be my question is like, when would that happen then?
I mean, just from a process standpoint, we gathered all the comments from the January forum. You know, we organized them into a spreadsheet and then connected each of those comments to the appropriate section of the bylaw that it pertained to.
Mhm.
And then at, I don't know, a meeting, we have to go back in the minutes, we went through and reviewed, we made a determination of whether we felt we'd adequately addressed that comment, or whether it needed to be reviewed. From that, we built what we called our parking lot, issues that we needed to review in subsequent meetings, and we chiseled away at those in, you know, over the last, since January, so. In the last 9 months, we've been tackling those things on the third Thursday of every month in this room. And in open forum, you know, and we have not cataloged every single, you know, sentence change that has gone in there. I mean, it's in a track change document in a Word, you know, in a Word thing, but. We've taken those comments in both the ones we received at the forum and in writing subsequent to that. And taken each of those into consideration through, you know, through the public meetings that we hold. So whether we adopted and made those changes that, you know, we certainly didn't just accept every single change that people suggested. We took them into consideration, decided as a board, whether we felt we had addressed that adequately or whether it be changed in the document.
I do think though that it would be, since that spreadsheet was a part of a public meeting. And it's in the record that spreadsheet with our comments as to which ones were going to be further considered, or we felt that spreadsheet can be made available to, so I think it would answer a large part of
Yeah,
your
and
questions.
we can match it up with this document and see where our comments ended up. I mean, I don't see any of mine. But that be it what it is. I've read it a couple times here, you know, and it's gonna come up in my comments on still issues, and should we be knocking? Like, do you want me to go first and then each person, or do you want each person to go off their list, it sounds like, you don't.
I'm
You can start that
fine
approach.
with going around the table first and then coming back
And
to
see
you,
what
Paul, and
happens,
see
yeah.
if there's other comments that might coincide with what you have. So, Mike, you've already mentioned, again, you're in line with some of the questions that Paul has raised. Are there any other things that you wanted to bring up right now?
I don't know if mine's gonna be 100% directly correlated to this, we haven't. like-
We don't.
Yeah, we didn't talk about it.
We're both at the
Well,
public
this is
meeting,
what,
the first.
this is what we're looking for though, so.
So I mean, I'm happy to discuss what I came here to discuss, and it really is related to rural one and scenic rural.
Mhm.
And I created a document for you guys that goes through the 30 towns that are part of Two Rivers. And I've read virtually all of their bylaws. And I tried to see where we fit in line with their acreage requirements. For those 30 towns, many of those towns have no bylaws. And Braintree, there's only 2 towns in that planning area that require 10 acres. That's Bethel and Braintree.
I missed it.
10 acres for what we would consider rural one. So like basically I went through and I read out what all the districts were and tried to match them up with Braintree, okay? And if you go and do that, and you look at all the districts, all the towns around us, virtually everybody has smaller values for acreage that's required to build. Braintree is extremely high. And even if you look at Bethel, okay, their difference between their 10-acre and their next level are completely different. Versus if you look at Braintree's bylaws and you look at rural one and you look at scenic, they're virtually the same. It makes no sense, and it would be a mistake to keep them the same. Because it doesn't make any sense. If we're trying to create something that's scenic and preserve it, why is it almost the same exact requirements as rural one? I just don't understand that. It doesn't make any sense to me. It actually hurts in the long term for this. Like who knows the next time we're gonna update these bylaws. And I don't believe the approach of trying to systematically put housing in one area without making an adjustment to this very odd districting in Braintree is a good approach. I mean, I'm happy to provide you with the document, but it is so strange that Braintree, out of these 30 towns, is the only one that has these 2 districts that are virtually identical, okay, but somehow they're different on paper. And it hinders what you can do in Braintree, basically. And that's my big thing about this. It's very frustrating to me as a person that is like just below the threshold of being able to subdivide in Braintree. And basically be like, oh, sorry, you don't have enough land, but I go and look around every other place around us, and the reason behind it is because Braintree wants to preserve land. And I brought this up at the last meeting, almost 70% of the land in Braintree is in current use, okay? It's already preserved. If you look at the amount of development that's in Braintree, we're talking like less than 5% of the land in Braintree is developed. And so if we're still just trying to push development to this smaller and smaller area, they're still never gonna be able to get more people here to reduce the tax, to increase the tax base. It doesn't make sense, and I think that needs to be clarified. I think that something significant needs to happen there. Either you have to get rid of a district, or you have to make changes to it, because it doesn't make sense why we have 2 districts that are virtually the same. And I think that's the basis of my comments.
I think the only difference is setbacks, isn't it?
It's setbacks, and you're allowed 20% versus 10%, but everything else is exactly the same. I mean, and no one here is building a 20,000 square foot building on their property. Who's building a 10,000 square foot building on their property? I mean, especially when you're virtually not allowed, like, I will say the brewery is gonna be an anomaly after this. And I think it's gonna be very hard for people to build anything without scrutiny anymore. That's not specifically along the 12A corridor where we don't really actually have the land for it. And it's not either in the floodplain, prime ag. Okay, and then that's assuming that these people that there want to subdivide, that they've always had, we talked about this last time. They've always had the ability to subdivide. These rules have already existed for a long time, and people don't do it because subdivision in general is costly. And so just assuming that we're gonna just all of a sudden subdivide these pieces of properties because they're here without allowing some other form of subdivision in Braintree isn't gonna help with the greater picture of the housing problem in Braintree. And I think it's being focused understandably partially by the state, But I think that we're focusing on just one specific thing without looking at the greater picture of Braintree.
Thank you.
Is it okay if I piggyback another?
Can we
That's the
just
same
see,
issue. Okay,
yeah, let's just see if there's any other comments and then we'll come back to your call.
that's not appropriate feedback.
Yeah, thank you.
It was just a comment. I don't need you to
Yeah,
ruffle me. I'm
no,
fine.
we'll just wanna allow others to speak real quick and then we can come back to your comment. Linda?
I'm wearing a couple hats, I wore from the and the GRB. And I'm looking forward to seeing what's in store for us. As a landowner, I would have to argue, maybe not quite as loud or eloquently as these two gentlemen. In favor of having wide open spaces, it's precious few places where you can find that. And especially, being fairly close proximity to some of the major metropolitan areas. Within a short drive, you can be out in the middle of nowhere. And having grown up in New York City, I can really relate to that from the other point of view too.
Thank you. Lou?
I have, 12 comments, 8 of which are, just, typographical, like stylistic things in the draft,
So formatting type?
formatting type things. So, you know, I can send them to you afterwards if you like. Substantively, on page 10. There is, a reference under number 13 to registered mobile homes, campers and travel trailers used for temporary habitation. Not exceeding 6 consecutive months within a calendar year. So I think the idea is that we want to regulate campers that are being used for 6 months or more. We want to treat them as a home, essentially, right? Rather than allowing people to live in a trailer for 8 months, 9 months or so. And I'm just wondering about your choice of language for 6 consecutive months. Someone could live in it for 5.5 months, go to Maine for 2 weeks, come back and start a new 6 consecutive months. So I think you might want to think about just changing that consecutive somehow to 6 months during a calendar year or something like that. That has some issues too. I'm not sure what the solution is, but I think the 6 consecutive months is potentially a problem. My next comment is on page 53. These are relative to the general conditional use standards. For some reason, you've limited scenic resources only to the rural scenic district. And so under what is mislabeled 6.5 EA, I think you should delete the words rural scenic district and also delete C sidebar, which is not, there isn't a sidebar there. So that when the DRB is considering any conditional use, one of the things that they consider are the scenic resources. So the development is located, shall be located and configured to avoid undue adverse impacts to the scenic character of the area. I don't think that should be limited exclusively to the rural scenic district.
Could I just ask a quick question about the document?
Yeah,
So I printed off the one from the website and it's in blue and red. And I assume the red is what you took out and blue is what you added back in. But my number pages don't match his.
that's what I was.
You could, like, what that number is?
Would you like to? A current copy that we're looking at,
No,
Paul?
he's got that copy.
Yeah,
Well, I took, the
Lose
one I have
that.
on my computer is off of the website.
Yeah.
Is the one that was.
But if we
posted for
say like
this
the
meeting.
section, if it's 6.5, then I,
Right,
but my numbers are not going.
that was
Correct,
just
what
going
he
to
said.
ask
but
the
but
same thing,
even
cause I was
even
looking at.
sometimes with the rewrite, the way this draft came out.
Yeah,
there is a renumbering, so that's, if
Yes.
you
Yeah, that's
might
what I
quote a
thought.
number that is not the same as.
Right, and then the number he said is like. totally
That's what I'm saying, if you like
Okay,
it,
yeah.
this also,
And so this document is 184 pages. The original one was 81 pages.
And the one I'm looking at is 108.
Okay, so that's where I'm like really,
All right, so, Paul, what I was just talking about
Okay,
is
thank you.
is section 6.5, okay?
I think Paul gave me the right.
Oh, you've got a hard copy,
You
so
gave me
that's
a-
page 53.
Yep, page 53, now that's matching up.
Okay, next one is page 69. And by the way, I'm here as a resident landowner, not as a select board member.
Can you give me the section, Lou?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, so the section now is
Public comment.
7.3 subdivision waivers. I do not understand why we go through page after page after page of all kinds of subdivision requirements. And then say in section 7.3 that the DRB can waive any of those in the informal. What's it called, the preliminary approval stage.
Without justification.
Well, maybe there's justification, maybe there isn't, certainly not required at a public hearing that the DRB is gonna waive those things. And I just don't think that that we should set forth a bunch of requirements that our DRB can then just determine that they're gonna waive whenever they want to. It's like set them up and they can decide there is no scenic resource here, right? But they can't waive consideration of it, you know? So I would suggest that there should not be DRB ability to waive subdivision requirements. And then my last substantive comment,
Can I just clarify that last comment,
Yep.
Lou? Just so I can reiterate that you do not want the DRB to be able to waive subdivision requirements. Is that accurate?
right?
Okay.
I mean, unless you have some reason that you think.
Well, at the regular meeting, you'd be okay with it, but not at the pre-application where
That's-
it's coming before.
That's a good
I
clarification.
mean,
Thank you.
that's,
Well, I don't think they can waive it. If we set forth that you've gotta do these things, they can consider number one and say, it is not relevant because. The landowner didn't want us to do this, it's a tiny little lot and we decide this, but they can't waive the requirement of it. You know, so it's like, set up what they have to consider it. And, you know, they can consider it summarily, but I don't think they can just waive it.
Okay.
And my last substantive comment is on page 82. And it's again, section 8.2, relative to waivers and variances. There's something in here in the middle that says applicants for new development that only needs a dimensional change from established standards, such as a reduction in setback, may be able to get a waiver. So I again don't think that that the board should be able to waive setback requirements. I think they can adjust them under that criteria. I don't think they can waive them. And I think you have to be very careful when you're talking about setback requirements, or sorry, dimensional requirements. Yes, that includes setbacks. It also includes lot size. And so I think the board should not, the DRB should not be able to adjust lot sizes. Which is a dimensional requirement in the DRB process.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh,
Paul, I wanna come back to your comments that you had earlier,
alright, so in Mike's. I agree with Mike on the difference between our rural one and rural scenic, there is no difference. Other than setback requirements, and it sounds like density of the lots. And I think that also shows up also in the village in your new district too. They're the same exact, why create a new district? Why not just extend the village to there? Because they're the same exact setbacks, they're the same, you're just making it. Like you're,
Mhm.
like by Mobile Acres there, up to Rifle Brook Road. That's your new neighborhood. And it's the same exact thing as the village up to where I am, south of town, there's no difference at all. So why have a different district? Call it all village.
Is there,
hold on.
Or neighborhood, because right now we're not in the village.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm in a 2 acre
Right,
zone, so
right.
it goes, it's under the same as the rural scenic NOAA and the neighborhood and the village are the same exact thing.
I can address that one.
And they abut each other, so just make one larger.
Yeah, there's some specifics on why we can't do that, but I can dive into those in a second.
Mhm.
Sandy, did you have any comments?
No, I don't.
Okay, and online, we have a couple of people, and I wanna make sure that they have an opportunity to speak. We have Jessica, which I believe is Jessie Broussard, and Grace Carsons, who. Any comments from the folks that are online? And I can't see the comments that are in the text
I
box
just,
there.
I just said raise your hand. if you
Okay,
want.
thank you.
Um, can you hear me?
Go ahead, Jesse.
Um, yeah, one comment I had is I don't know, it just makes me a little bit nervous having to pay for a survey of a property when you have absolutely no idea whatsoever if there's even a chance that your property can be subdivided. From what I understand, surveys these days are no longer $2,000. They're quite substantial in pricing, and so if you're not gonna be able to get anything out of it, it seems like there should be maybe some sort of preliminary hearing or something like that. Or be able to have some sort of discussion before having to do a survey.
Thank you.
Could I piggyback on my comments to that sort of in line with that?
Yeah, please go ahead, Paul.
So if I come in, I think I'm one of the only ones who've done a major subdivision in the town of Braintree, and I come in and I do my subdivision, I've gotten all my state permits, I filed my map. In 3 years, if the town determines that I haven't substantially done that, I have to come back and reapply.
Substantially done that means
I don't
started,
know how to-
commenced work, and what is the definition of substantially
Does that mean
commencing?
building houses, does that mean putting septics, does that mean putting wells in?
Or just cutting down?
I put in $10,000
Mhm.
into my property, and then you're saying in 3 years I gotta come back and renew my permit, and the map is already filed here in the land records. I've got my state permit, it's on the state website,
Mhm.
septic designs and everything, but the town of Braintree wants me to come back in and discuss it with them. Because I don't know if I substantially have started or not, that was a concern of mine, the money outlaid, and then knowing that it could be taken away from me
Right,
or be questioned. I mean, in my case, I have 6 lots and I'm gonna do one every 3, 4 years and it's my retirement. I am not planning on doing it in 2 years. It's gonna be something that's done in 10 or 12 years.
yeah,
And that's my equity in the property, and for me to have to keep coming in and justifying that is a hard one.
understood. Grace, do you have any questions or comments that you would like to bring forward? Grace is also our zoning administrator as well, so it's important for us to understand her perspective, both as a citizen and as our ZA. And Grace and Jesse, if you have questions, feel free to put them into the chat or just chime up real quick if you have anything.
Who's Eric Will?
Eric Webb has also joined us.
Right.
So thank you, Lou, I didn't notice that one. Eric, would like you to have the opportunity to speak if you have any questions or comments.
No, I'm only an observer. Thank you.
Thank you.
I do have one other thing. This is Jesse. So my other thing is just to reiterate what I discussed at the last hearing that you had was the half-acre lots and how I think it's ridiculous that we're even entertaining the idea of half-acre lots when the state makes it so freaking difficult for you to do anything on your half an acre. And I think it's misleading. There's plenty of people out there that don't understand how all of this works. And you know, and there's plenty of people out there who would love to take advantage of those people who don't understand how these things work and come in and sell a bunch of half-acre lots and move to some other state and not look back when you've got, now you have all these 10-acre lots and nobody can do anything on them because this wonderful state that we live in makes it so friggin' difficult for you to do anything with your half acre.
Thank you.
I would like to reiterate that there's no way you can put a well inside of a half acre with the isolation distance. It's tough enough on an acre. Unless you're doing easements on other people's lands and getting neighbors' permissions and stuff like that.
So it's not impossible.
It's not impossible, but
Okay.
it's likely not to happen, and then it encumbers the property with easements and right of ways, and I find a lot of folks are a little wary about sharing wells and septics. In case something goes wrong, whether it's a well.
I do think the idea of something not being impossible but improbable is, I don't know why you would make rules around that, because like the idea of maybe something in the future, like in 10 years, maybe we have new septics, but why incorporate it into the bylaws now when it's not probable? It seems,
Is this in reference to the half acre?
it is
as
in
well?
reference to the half acre. It seems odd. Why would we be doing that when it could, again, the idea is to address affordability
Mhm.
in some of that fashion. Doesn't sound like that would be met with a bunch of other stuff that would have to be required to make those half acre lots work, if it's even possible. And it would be on a total case by case basis.
Definitely. Sorry for those that are not here, but there's some wonderful refreshments.
They can't sweetness that.
Um. I really appreciate the open conversation and the clear comments and not just suggestions. But specific items that you're referencing in the draft plan. I think everybody has done a really awesome job of keeping us informed of the questions, like. This is not the only time we've heard some of these questions, right? And if we don't have any other comments, I just wanna make sure everybody has the
Excuse me, I have-
opportunity.
Also a copy.
I'm not done yet either.
Yeah, I.
That's why we need to have another hearing. Let's just move this to your October meeting, have another public.
Thanks, Paul. But I also have received some public comments by email today, as recently as today, from people from our planning commission. That. Based on the draft that we have in front of us, they still have some additional comments, and so I would like to, just first, Malcolm, had. Some specific things that he wanted to bring to this public hearing as a public citizen as well. And then, Paul Kendall also has some suggestions, and then we'll come back to you after we go to those two first, please. Okay, Malcolm?
Yeah, I actually looked at bylaw in two different ways. One is at the statute that permits us to have certain bylaw. And the statutes are somewhat confusing in part, but if you look at them long enough, you may be able to figure out what they say. But essentially, we are in our enabling state, enabling. And you cannot do anything which is not stated in the bylaw. Other than the statute, you cannot do a bylaw, which if it's not enabled in the statute. And the statute does several things. It says may, and therefore you can do what it says may do. But some areas it says may, if you may do this if you incorporate all the following. And in other places it says you may not do it, but that's very true. So there's some gray areas in between, is what I'm saying. And the confusing thing is, if it says may and if, does that mean you gotta take all of the things that, when it says if, and I believe it does, but when I looked at some of the things that say, if you accept this under a may thing, we have not incorporated all of them into the bylaw itself. And I like a legal opinion on that, I don't know, but if you have to, I suspect you have to. And so there are some things that I think that we just have in there that we like to think there should be in the enabling, in the statute as enabling, and I'm not sure they are. Again, that's a gray area on your interpretation of the statute. And I went through and all of them, but I found a lot of them, thanks to Carl, he's incorporated in the bylaw. But in doing so, there is more confusion. In other words, we are now, for example, we are now by right entitled to 2 principal dwelling units on a lot. And every dwelling unit on a lot has a right to have an external accessory unit. So that means we get 4, if guy has enough money, he can build a principal use and another principal use and 4 accessory uses. Which I'm not sure is what they intended to do in the legislature, but it's there. And there's nothing that says you can't put, if you have 2 principal dwellings, you can't put 2 other accessory uses. And then I can go through this and the bylaws themselves and show where there's really a problem. If you have an astute person who wants to develop some lots, he can really get away with the law. The other problem I see is I go back to the laws itself. The most complicated law that we are asking, I'm not asking, I wasn't for it, to be incorporated in our bylaws is the flood acts. Acts that says what is a flood hazard zone, what's a corridor area, and so on. So anybody who wants to do anything near a river or a stream has a big jump to get through those loops. And the flood hazard area and the corridor area are not congruent always. In fact, they're not. So how are we gonna let this person build in neither one of those areas? Or one and not the other? The flood hazard areas are, as I understand it, are built on where floods have been in the past. And then they looked at the contours and where they would be in the future. So there's a realistic basis to the flood hazard areas. The corridor areas came about, I call the green people, because they want the stream or river to wander where it wants to wander. And they drew these lines. They looked at the distance of the present river, distance between the 2 banks, and on either side they drew a line 3 times the width of the river banks. And I think that is just, person does not understand the scientific, how streams work. They do wander, but they wander depending on the soil, the rocks, construction, and so on. I mean, I went down to Lebanon today, looked down at the White River, and I was amazed to see the river is fairly dry, but I also imagined if that stream had dried up, there would be a corridor down the middle, a single, where the low point of the stream would be continuous. But not, it's a winding area, the stream bed. And I was trying to think, how would that dynamic of that stream water under the heavy stream that usually occurs in the White River, how did that get a wandering stream bed? I don't know for sure. But what the Corridor Act does not recognize is that the wandering or serpentine area of a stream or river has, especially during flood, it wipes out all of what's below it. it's just the velocity of that water. And the volume of that water with that velocity just takes everything downstream. That's in there, and then it rebuilds itself. It's a dynamic thing. And I agree, we have to get areas that let the stream wander in, if that's what a river really wants to do, and you can tell because it's in geomorphological soil. The soil washes away. And the biggest culprit of that really is the state itself, building roads near streams, across streams, rivers. And the big example of that is the road to Burlington. You look off onto your right going to Burlington, and there's a little teepee on the right-hand side, and it's in the middle of little ponds. Those little ponds were the curves in the river at one time. But the river itself was way over that side before they built the interstate in. Yeah,
Excuse me, is this supposed to be comments on the bylaw? It
Thank you.
doesn't sound like
Yeah.
that's what.
it's in the bylaw. That's what bothers me.
So what
So,
portion of the bylaw are you asking about, you know?
And also it's set by the FEMA maps and the federal government, it's not set by the town. You
yeah,
guys tweak it like from 1 foot to 2 foot, and that's one of my comments, but that's about it. You get what the federal government hands down with FEMA and flood quarters and floodways and
No,
stuff.
the state is determining the quarters.
The state is, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what you need, flood insurance is insured by FEMA, and it's a 1 foot base level within a certain distance. It's where.
That's within.
Malcolm and others, I do just wanna make sure we come back to point, and if
Yeah,
there's a
what I'm
specific,
saying is,
I understand.
I think it's a very complicated to have two different bylaw or protection of the river based on two different ways to do it. One, I think the flood hazard area is very scientific. The corridor is some imagination of someone in the state. If you look at the third branch where the river goes under the bridge, the new bridge, they had to restore it. The corridors are way off into the edges of it, of that stream above the bridge. Then all of a sudden they narrow down and all of their water from that wide river corridor above it goes under that bridge. That is physically impossible if you know anything about flow of water. They can't get under that bridge.
Malcolm,
Yeah,
can we bring it back to?
yeah, I'm saying there's no rationale or reason for the corridor, I don't think.
You don't believe we should be adhere, so can I summarize your comment?
But it's in the state law, but I don't think it should be in our law. What the state is doing, I think, is trying to make the towns enforce the law they made, no matter how bad it is.
So is your comment that you want something taken out of the?
I would take the whole thing out and
Really?
let the town, if it wants to, have a different bylaw about the corridors and the rivers and the floods.
So you don't agree with the flood corridor?
I do not.
Do you agree with the flood hazard?
Yes,
Overlay? Okay, thank you.
and definitely, because to have anyone even enforce one of these is gonna take a lot of expertise and skill. Unless we hire another person. But that's gonna be expensive. To figure out where, the corridor you can't figure out on the map, you have to look on where they drew the lines.
Any additional specific items related to the proposed bylaw that you have?
I have a lot of corrections and I think there's contradictions in the actual bylaw. And it's hard to understand because of the contradictions. And I'll go to, let someone else speak, but what I'm saying is, we have to go back and look at the enabling statute. To see what it says you can or cannot do, and I think we need a legal assistance on that. The biggest problem comes in conditional use and site plan. To me, the site plan is an area of information, spatial, usually 2-dimension on a piece of paper. And conditional use are uses that are gonna be within someplace on that plan. But what you've got to do is attach the conditional uses to development of that space that's shown on the site plan. So, you know, for example, if you have a large building and you have a neighbor nearby within a couple hundred feet, and you have a noise making equipment, you put it on the other side of that building, not towards the neighbor. Because it can go through the wall, but it dissipates as it goes outside.
It's like if you started your tractor and your neighbor heard it.
What? I'm sorry, Bill.
If a neighbor started the tractor on that side of the building, the neighbor should have a say about the decibel level.
What I'm saying is that neighbor can be tolerant of the noise
Or not.
if the inside generating of that noise is on the far side. I mean, it takes someone with some knowledge of noise that you can, how you can mitigate it. And one of the common things of mitigating noise are trees. But I've been with some developers who planted pine trees on the side to mitigate. Pine trees go up and the noise goes underneath. It's not a tree that you can mitigate noise with. And if you look at noise attenuation books, they tell you that, but these we again need somebody or some specifics in our site plans and conditional use who knows anything about developing in areas.
So
You want,
can I summarize this, that you have concerns that the DRB is allowed uniformly to provide that conditional use? You would like some type of instrument that requires them to get professional advice?
allows them to and requires, yes. If they don't understand it, just then it's
We're all volunteers,
because
so
essentially what we've done under the new bylaw. Under the old bylaw, everything other than 1 and 2 family housing were by right. You could go in and build if you met the other setback dimensional requirements. We now are permitting other types of housing by conditional use or site plan, or the two together, go into areas that were now 1 or 2 family lots. So everything now other than 1 and 2 family on these lots are gonna require some sort of conditional use. And that's gonna be a real burden, I think, on the DRB. And when I asked, I have some expertise
Are
in
you
some,
saying that it's gonna be hard for them to make a decision that's the same every single time so that it's fair? Because I guess I don't understand what you're getting at. You're saying it's gonna be a burden on the DRB. Is that because it's not clear how to make the decision? And so everybody's decision is gonna be different?
yes. It's gonna be conditioned on what district that's in, what the conditional use actually is. And there's a list of them in
so
the,
you would like us to be more specific about the conditional uses in this scenario?
either that we gotta hire someone who understands it.
Or don't put noise in your zoning,
I'm sorry?
don't put noise in your zoning, or scenic resources, because we defines that. I mean, that's the other option, don't put those.
Okay, we've gone nearly.
Let me
to the
just
point,
add one
so-
final point.
Okay, I wanna make sure we allow time for
Yeah.
others to speak. and
I'll go through some specific,
you've already provided these comments.
but let me, not all.
And I've shared them
Uh,
with the planning commission.
But the other thing is, as a planner, I would have started this whole process of looking at a soil map. To see where there are good soils in terms of working with your septic system. Those I would have set aside for higher density housing. So there should be areas that around town that we could put higher density housing, mix it with some affordable. And so we can have low cost housing mixed with other housing. They exist in this area, some gravel area will take it. But you gotta be aware of where that gravel, when it goes down into the gravel area, where it goes underground to whose ever septic system or well. So they're designing areas requires a working map of soils and what soils you can have for septic system. That's where I think we should have started. But I'll end there for now.
Thank you. Or I go Paul Kendall as a another planning commission member, but also a public citizen. Paul, go ahead, please.
Yeah, before I give my list of four, suggested, edits, I want to thank, Kyle Katz, who, since this has all been brewing in the last week, once we started really looking and rereading all that we had drafted, certain things began to pop. And so, in the last 3 days, basically, Kyle has very kindly and generously responded quickly to my questions and concerns. So so much of what we have done in this proposed redrafting of the bylaws has been possible because of Kyle's generous donation of his time over and above what was really required by the grant, in my opinion. And certainly in this last several days. But let me just go on in terms of my own suggestions here. The planning commission has prepared this proposed update of the unified bylaws to bring it into conformance with the recently adopted town plan, especially in regard to encouraging the development of more housing and to enable the bylaws' efficient administration. The following suggested edits address certain sections of the bylaw that, in my view, are either unclear, confusing, incomplete, or ambiguous, and that could therefore affect a consistent and timely review process of development permit applications. My first one has to do with section 1.7. Section 1.7 grants the Development Review Board certain authority, but it omits the DRB's authority over site plan approval and subdivision approval. These authorities should be added. That's a simple edit. Second, section 3.12 permits accessory dwelling units under certain conditions. The list of conditions included in the proposed bylaw, however, is confusing and omits mention that if an ADU adds a bedroom, a state wastewater permit may be required. I think that should be added and picked up. And I have copies of what I'm reading that I can distribute later. Section, my third has to do with a concern about waivers, which has been raised both by Lou and Jesse in different ways. Section 7.3 grants to the DRB a very broad authority to grant waivers during the review of a subdivision application. Its opening sentence says, as part of its approval, the Development Review Board may waive or vary, subject to appropriate conditions, the provisions of any and all application or review procedures submitted and development requirements. I've had several back and forth communications with Kyle on this to basically understand what's going on here. And at the suggestion of Kyle, it seems to me that the best way to respond to the breadth of this waiver authority is to narrow the DRB's authority to waive certain subdivision review requirements in section 7.8. Jesse's comment raises a point about 7.7, which I think can be considered in the same light when we get to that. And my last suggestion is that in section 3.8 is very unclear. It permits up to 2 principal buildings on a single lot. The section then permits an exception to this two-building limit. If a lot is able to be subdivided, this section says, more principal buildings may be permitted on a single lot. But the section neither mentions the agency and process for determining that ability to be subdivided, nor does it say how that ability to be subdivided should be made a part of the lot's permanent land record. This exception is in fact a waiver. Anytime you're going to accept something, you're waiving it. And it should therefore state in section 3.8 that requesting such an exception will require subdivision review. So, those, Mr. Chairman, are my 4 suggestions, and we can come back to them when we're reviewing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any additional comments?
I'd like to, if possible.
Of course, we want to make sure we're taking into consideration everything that
No,
everybody
I
has. to say.
I want to thank you folks for your time.
Yeah.
I was on the Randolph Planning Commission for 12 years. We updated zoning that was 30 years old, and it's really hard. And every time you look at it, it looks different, and you're like, what were we thinking? So that's why I caution you not to think this thing through. Take the time. It's a lot. It's gonna stay with the town for a little while. I have already heard some reluctance even amongst the planning commission members that maybe it shouldn't be voted on tonight and sent to the select board. Maybe you need a couple more meetings, or maybe one more public meeting, and then we're all on board. That's just
Yeah,
something that I would like to see happen, whether it happens or not, it's just my opinion.
the other thing that I would like to also just reiterate is we have the ability to make changes, not just as a full overblown review of the draft. So if there are specific items, even as a process piece, right? If we vote this onto the select board, there's an opportunity for the select board to make changes. If the select board does not, or does make changes, we can still update certain sections one by one, or we can go through what we tried to do this time and do a comprehensive change of that. So there's a process for us to make amendments as we move forward. This is not a stagnant document. This is a living document that can be updated throughout the near future or the long future of the town of Braintree. So it's
harder to do.
It is harder to do, and you have 2 or 3 more meetings, you would have a solid document with transparency and people's opinion who are community members. And who do have a passion for the area and wanna see things better. So I guess the rest of my comments. You had mentioned about the campers thing in the 6 month, I used to own Able Mountain Campground. I would like to see the campers need to be registered as a registered vehicle on top of that. I think that would make it a little bit clearer.
Is that just for a specific
No, if it's a
Like,
camper, it really should.
licensed campground, or you know
That's
what
why
I'm saying? It's kind of a murky thing, right?
If someone's living in it over the 6 months, it really should be registered.
Okay.
If they're over that 6 month period, they need to be filing a registration if they're not calling it a home.
Hmm.
I think that's one of the ways to sort of deal with it.
So you're saying register the camper if it's being in a place for over 6 months?
Yes. Would be one of the things I would add to that. Malcolm brought up some things that I wasn't really thinking about before, but when I was on the planning commission on wording and stuff like that, and working with Two Rivers out of Queechee, we always looked at it as may, shall, and should in our zoning document.
Mhm.
You may do it, you should do it, you shall do it, you're doing it. So, if you think of it from those standpoints, when you're looking what you wanna really enforce, what you wanna have teeth, those 3 words really are strong.
Yeah.
The flood thing, I have a little bit of concerns with, that is driven by FEMA and federal government as far as the flood hazard area. That's what you get if the town wants to get federal money to replace culverts, upgrade culverts and stuff like that. You really, really, really have to do that. There's no question. I agree on the channel, or that's something new that's come up, that, you know, they really haven't been mapped, they haven't been studied, and I would ask us to be a little bit cautious about that.
And that's a moving piece.
It is, but it's because it's coming down from the state without input.
And it's not even coming from the state. There are certain federal regulations that are changing as far as the definition of flood hazard regulations. So
Mhm.
whether it be a flood federally FFRMS, I believe is the code for it now, federally flood regulated something other. But it's not just flood hazard mitigation areas anymore. So it's a tough thing, and honestly, just as a public comment here from the planning commission, this intent of this is to keep us in line with both state and federal statutes, so, I'm sorry to interrupt, but keep going.
Yeah, it's.
It's a moving target for us.
Yeah, so the floodplain, we went from 1 foot above base elevation to 2 feet.
Mm-hmm,
That's a big deal
mm-hmm.
in the floodplain about where you can build.
Well, do you,
When I owned the campground, it was 1 foot, all my building elevations, when I had to rebuild, had to be at that 1 foot, now you're saying it's 2 foot.
and that
That is very
changes,
daunting to one of your biggest businesses in the town of Braintree right now.
Yeah.
So,
and that changes too, because they're remapping all the floodplains right now, right?
no,
They are.
the federal law is 1 foot. We've gone to 2 feet.
If I can just
Okay, yep.
chime in here, the FEMA minimum is base flood elevation, which means. The base of your front door is at that flood height. So going 1 foot above that is 1 foot above what we think that base flood would be. Now, there's no. New principal residential structures, new principal commercial, any new principal structures prohibited in the floodplain, it is right now. And so in this draft, we're not changing that.
No, but you're going from the 1 to the 2, and that's a big deal.
For
For
substantial,
substantial improvement, so if a house washes away and they want to rebuild. They're saying go 2 feet above because you washed away.
correct.
So you're saying only after a flood like the campground?
We won't let you, based on our existing flood regulations, to build new in a flood hazard area.
Right, it's existing in the current bylaw.
Unless you bring it up to the 10 foot.
No,
No,
you can't build at
Can't
all
build.
in that area.
In the floodway, the floodway is where the channel is roaring.
No, the entire special flood hazard area, so both the.
100,
1%, 1% chance flood.
In the whole 100 foot, you're not gonna allow, like Ken's, the Eagle Mountain Campground,
Not tents, permanent structures.
they have an office, they have a pavilion, they have a pool house.
It's existing, so if they get flooded out and substantial damage happens, if they're to rebuild, they would have to rebuild at least 2 feet above that base flood elevation.
That's what I
Which-
said.
Would, if they rebuild.
Yeah, that's what I
We don't
understand.
have, they don't have to do it now. Once.
I understand that.
Okay.
I understand that, but that is still something that's a little more onerous about somebody that inches matter. Rather than flying up a
You
foot.
could-
Where the federal is 1 foot,
Understood.
I would ask that you go back to the 1 foot, that's
Yeah.
my comment.
Can I add something to that? My interpretation of the rebuild is that if you suffer more than 51% damage. And it's 51% of several variables. More than 51% damage, you cannot rebuild. Unless you have very specific things you can do. One of them is you can't hinder the flow of the water. Well, that's why it floods, there's water there. So it's very tough to rebuild if you're in the floodway.
Yes.
I understand that.
And the other thing is that 51%, say you had two different homes. One, you had a very wealthy home, say a $500,000 house, and the other was a $200,000 house. They each suffered $100,000 worth of damage, or 110,000, which is more 50% of 200, more than 50% of 200. He can't rebuild. But for that same $100 damage to the wealthy house, he can rebuild. Yes,
That's not true.
That's not correct.
It's not true at all.
Yes, that's not correct.
that's the way I
could not
read it.
imagine that somebody's coming down to the campground and telling me that I cannot rebuild my business
No.
and rebuild my wealth.
Yeah,
And just be shut down just because I lost everything.
right.
There's 8 feet of water over, I mean, I lost every building, I lost it. I would not be here today if I was not able to rebuild and sell.
I don't know how you did it, because I think you should be able to rebuild. But my reading of the law, Paul, says you can't.
You're reading on the laws, you're reading on the law.
Going with the
and-
51% of it.
And I can take that into advisement and we'll put that into the public comments.
Well,
But
show
there's-
me how you can rebuild, I'd be interested.
I did it.
I know,
There were no
that's
rules
okay,
for 6 months after Irene.
I'm already for that,
You
Paul,
could do,
but the law says
but I
you
did it
can't.
right.
Essentially, what.
Malcolm, please,
Alright.
we're not in
We're
a,
not here to
we're not in a
argue that.
debate.
Taking comment.
We need to take comments and we need to allow the public to be able
I'm
to.
trying to educate them as to. the-
You're not, this is not your opportunity to educate somebody on the flood regulations as you see them. This is an opportunity for, please,
They're in our bylaw now, the
Please.
proposed bylaw.
please, Malcolm. You need to allow others to
I
speak,
will.
please. We've
I'll
heard
come
your
again.
comments and we'll take them under advisement. Thank you.
I'm gonna keep my comments really a lot shorter. I don't wanna, you know.
No, you're okay. Thank you. I want to.
I wanna be a good community member and stuff like that, but I
Yep.
totally disagree with that. I'd like to know where that 51% is coming from. The driveway standards,
Yes.
I find that's gonna make things very expensive for people. If someone puts a camp on a hill, they've got percent grades, they've got travel width now that they have to build the road by. And then it's gotta be to the town's discretion of whether it was built right or not, and we don't have the staffing for that.
Mhm.
We really need to just sort of tame that down. I can see with a major subdivision, but on a 2-lot subdivision or somebody creating a house in the road and it's on private land. Let them build the road to what they can afford.
Yeah.
And if they want to use 4-wheel drive to get up there, let them use 4-wheel drive to get up there. I mean, I understand the fire, you know, being able to get a fire truck and you wanna do that, but. These road standards are gonna make it expensive for everybody.
Mm.
And if we're trying to get the goal of affordability in Vermont, that's not it. I understand that in 2024, the state of Vermont passed the Vermont Energy Code. And that we talk about implementing it in our zoning. I'm in agreement about, you know, making things as tight as possible. However, that's not making housing more affordable. I'm building a house right now. In the energy code, we always used to use 2-inch foam board in a foundation on the floor and on the sidewalls. The energy code now goes to 3-inch on those same things and 3-inch on the floor. That's a difference of $35 each piece of foam board.
Mhm.
And then you start doing that with like spray foam and getting these certain energy standards. And is the town gonna go inspect that someone said, or is it just like word of mouth and certify what goes into the land records and that's it?
Yeah.
I think we should be aware of what these energy standards are and what we're implementing. Cause if someone builds a camp and they're using it seasonally or 3 months, do we really concerned about whether it meets the energy code that we don't know about? And we're referring to it, it's a shall in this document,
Mhm.
so.
But it comes back to what you said earlier.
It's a shall, there's no gray area.
Yeah.
Someone's gotta certify that that house that you just built meets the energy code, and there's a lot of housing in this area. That people could not afford to live where they were if they had to make it into the energy code. So I just. I like the idea. But we need to understand the impact on making housing affordable.
My interpretation of that is that the law says you should build that way. It doesn't say you have to.
Easy to say.
I think what Paul was just saying is that minute difference between shall
Sure,
and should.
Right.
And so
May.
he's bringing that up to our attention in that section.
those wording, those simple words are really big.
Yes.
When you say that, and if you don't know what that code is, let's not push it on to our Braintree residents until have a clear idea.
And did
what
you
that-
just see the executive order from our governor?
I haven't, I'm sorry, I'm living in a different world now.
So, the executive order that was just signed yesterday, is telling regulatory entities, specifically on residential building, efficiency standards, to go back to either using 2020 standards or 2024 standards. So that's a valid point that, again, it's a moving target for us on that.
Alright.
But the governor is saying that now if you're building certain types of residential buildings, that you can either be reviewed under 2020 or 2024, and there's a huge difference, as you just pointed out.
My original.
I don't know how that's gonna work.
Built in 2023.
Yeah.
Now I have to follow 2024.
Oh, God, I hope
And
not.
No, and
The simplicity of what
It's
you were
really
applying
gotten a
for.
lot more expensive for me to hit the energy code.
Yeah,
And they have the means of doing it. There might be some folks that aren't able to do that. And how are we
Mhm.
gonna police those people and put that onus on them? I'm really scared about that.
that's an understandable comment, thank you.
Um, in the long run, I don't see how this document makes living in Braintree more affordable. I find it more regulatory
Mhm.
and not affordable. That's just my own. The only thing that I think that we were attempting to make it affordable was the half acre zoning. And I could sit here till I was blue in the face, say it over and over, you cannot do a well septic in your building envelope. It's hard enough to do it on 1 acre if you had full flat 1 acre. The half acre thing really is throwing something out there that I don't think someone can do without a lot of maneuvering around.
Have, just out of curiosity, has anybody looked at any other town that implemented a half acre zoning that's not on town sewer or water? And are they doing it?
Well, Braintree has it right now in the South Braintree Village, it's a hazard density.
May I explain why? There was a water system up on top of the hill that used to fill for locomotives. That whole village was on the spring on the top of the mountain, and above there's a house and stuff like that. Over time, that dried up during severe droughts and stuff like that, and it wasn't a reliable source, so people had to start drilling wells and stuff like that. They can do that on an existing lot, but if someone's gonna, has an acre and they wanna subdivide a half acre, they're still not gonna be able to do it, because they still gotta put a well and septic there. And if it's an in-ground system, then you gotta prove out a replacement area. So it's just no way, I've been in real estate 30 years and
There's multiple communities throughout the state of Vermont that are trying to tackle that issue.
It's
From Montgomery to, Waitsfield, two different ends of the spectrum right there. They're trying to grapple with on-site wastewater and septic that are in, whether they're currently existing in half acre lots or 1 acre lots, but they're trying to encourage development in a dense area through either shared septic and shared water, or a municipal system, or a municipal wastewater or municipal water system. And there are decentralized ways of doing that. And by designating those areas, and I'm kind of moving ahead of myself here by kind of trying to respond to some of the questions that you said, but this will be the next agenda item, so. There are ways for that to happen. If we don't allow it to happen within our zoning regulations, it's not going to happen. So we're saying that if we want this to happen with dense development, this is where we want it. And that's how we went about that approach.
But that's,
So,
like, that's.
Don't wanna debate it, I just wanted to let you know as a response, that's why we were
So we're not
saying,
even close to that in the town of Braintree yet, there was no pressure.
I don't need to debate it.
Yeah.
Okay?
There's just no pressure,
Yeah.
they don't have to.
I just,
Can we, before we devolve,
no, that's,
Are there
I just
are
wanted
there
to
other
address the.
comments?
That the half acre zoning exists now, say if somebody had a failed septic system in Braintree on those half acre. And they had to get a new septic system, how could they possibly?
A mound system is how they would have to do it.
Okay,
Well, typically, so you can only subdivide if you get your state wastewater.
Right.
Correct.
So if you can't do it on half an acre, you're not getting that permit, you're not subdividing. So you go a little bigger, maybe 3/4 of an acre, and you can do it.
It's
So
a sort
in
of-
that sense, it's making it more affordable by saying you can, we're trying to make it as accommodating as possible. And as affordable as possible, so you're not having to buy a 1 acre or 2 acre lot, you can maybe go a little under. If you can do it on half an acre,
this year would be a lot of lots. Available out there are already at that threshold, there's not a lot of,
Correct, there's a lot of pre-existing lots that are less than an acre
yeah.
throughout the town that. Failed septic systems have required a full mound 30,000 and plus wastewater system to be installed to be able to keep that house occupied.
Yeah,
right,
And people have made that investment, and that's an investment that each individual property owner has to take on themselves.
but with any new. Wastewater permit, you're also looking at a replacement septic
Right.
location as well, so you
And that's
have.
the mound, like Nick's saying, if it's a pretty mound, you can take the mound away now, and you can rebuild it, you don't need to that's the bonus of a.
But it's expensive and it's not affordable.
Yeah, for $30,000, you get to take it away.
Yeah, so So these are all very important things for us to consider as the planning commission, but as I preferenced. Or referenced was the ability for us to say this could happen.
But what,
Versus this shall not happen, are two different approaches that we considered, right?
can I just make one last comment?
Yeah, please.
All state septic and subdivision rules come from the state. Wait for the state to change the idea of how a septic looks. We designed a 3-bedroom home septic system for 420 gallons a day. It's huge. The average family does not use 420 gallons a day.
Right.
If they drop that requirement and dropped it down to 350 gallons or 300 gallons, which is more realistic probably, if you're doing laundry every day. So let it come from the state. It's not.
My
up
kids
to
are
us.
dirty, Paul, like,
Yeah,
man,
but it's
I'm
still-
constantly
We
doing
have no
laundry.
say in state subdivision, we have no say in septic.
Right,
It has to come from them and it's up to our legislators to say, it's costing me $40,000 to build a Presby mound. How do we make this less expensive?
Mhm.
That you don't have to truck certified mound sand from Lebanon, New Hampshire to Braintree, Vermont. I mean, that's where it comes from. It doesn't come from creating a half-acre zone and saying, this is our affordability.
I will encourage you to check out the executive order that
Okay,
the
yeah,
governor
I
just
haven't.
did, like, I haven't dived into it either, it literally just came out on Wednesday, and it's already getting challenged by like the Natural Resource Review Board, which is now the land use review board, the LURB, a lovely word, and A&R itself are questioning it, so, but that does impact how we enforce things locally and at a state level.
I can live with the half-acre thing if that's what you folks wanna do, but it's not.
No, I understand, it's
As
not,
long as it's expressed by the town of Braintree, by the zoning administrator, that
you need a state permit,
you need a state permit.
and, yeah,
And-
and that's what we've
Try
tried
to
to
make
do.
the contact a licensed designer, and that's where you start before we'd say.
Definitely.
Half-acre.
And I think a lot of that
It
also
gets
looks,
missed sometimes.
yeah, and I think a lot of that, what we tried to do. And we're kind of moving into the next section of discussion for consideration of these public comments, so before I close public comments, I would like to just give an opportunity for anybody else to speak.
The risk of extending these arguments. It should be noted somewhere that not all land is suitable for development. Period.
Correct. Yeah, thank you.
Well,
And that's what the state of Vermont does with its regulations, I mean, we cover that, with wetlands, delineation, we. cover
And even
it.
it's not just wetlands, there's a lot of places that are not suitable. And recognize that and leave them where natural.
But that's why you have the conservation zone. To zone.
You're not listening.
But I just, yeah, okay. I understand that there are some things, I mean, the cost of developing a piece of land is the biggest barrier. How far you from power, what the septic system is.
I mean, anything can be developed, like if you have enough money, anything can be developed. It's not a matter of if or not, it's just a matter of if you want to.
If you're willing to go through.
And
Time
then
money.
you
Time
can
money.
literally develop anything.
Should it?
No,
I mean, yeah,
But time
that's,
money, I'll do anything.
that's a very confusing.
I agree with you. And you're
Large
Christian.
argument of like,
And that is the crux of what we tried to do here.
Yeah, all
Right.
you're saying is, it is permitted if you meet the conditions. All right? And if you meet the conditions, even for something that you would think, why on earth anybody want to build there? It's a question of, Mike says, it's a question of money. If they really have enough money so that they can comply with those conditions, then they can build there. All this is permissive, it's permitted. It's not saying you can't, it's simply saying, hey, if you want to build here, even though you might be loony, okay? But if you got enough money and you want to build there, you can do that. That's exactly what Mike is saying, and that's what the zoning permits.
I do want to thank everybody for the opportunity to hear your concerns and your specific points of either clarification or disagreement or agreement with us tonight through the review of the draft bylaws. If there are no other public comments, I just, again, want to make sure everybody has the opportunity to do that, because there's no reason for us to limit comments if there's additional discussion to have. Other than that, we need to get home at some point and take action at this, right?
avoided having to wash dishes in the brewery. My only question is that, and I still didn't see it, is that it doesn't appear that there's any delineation for commercial development in Braintree still.
Yeah. That's a good one, because you haven't said that specifically tonight, but we have received comments in the past, not just from
Yes.
you, but from other individuals throughout the town. About the clarification of that, and we did try to define that. So at
Did you
this
share
point,
like other comments that you got in writing from people, so we just know what?
yes,
Is
we
that not
can-
appropriate?
But not, we are not here this evening to do that.
Okay, all right,
Uh,
all right, I just was wondering, I would like to know what other people will have looked at it.
Yeah,
for comments.
so we
If they're not
have
here.
not just the list of comments that and parking lot issues that were raised at the public forum back in January. We have public comments on record that we've held in our files that are available for viewing by the public. I wish I had a better synopsis of them right off the top of the head right now, Paul, but I don't, unfortunately.
Oh, no problem.
I'm not prepared well
Well,
enough to be able to.
The minutes are on file if you want, you know.
One of them I can say is specifically looking at subdividing in a rural one district, whether that be a 10 acre or 5 acre lot, or even a 6 acre lot, in consideration of that. Consideration of reducing or expanding conservation zones due to wildlife corridors or another thing. And suitability for building within a floodplain versus a flood corridor, or even on terrain that is steep and prone to overland flooding versus inundation flooding, right? So, those are some of the big ones that I think popped up throughout our conversation, as well as the proper location to encourage housing development, whether that be in a village center area that was traditionally a village center versus where we think a village center would be more suited due to its proximity to the ability to tie into an existing water and wastewater system that's operated by a municipality neighboring us, such as Randolph. Which would lead a huge, I think, argument for us to look at what we're calling South Randolph, which is this area around the town offices as a village center with 1/2 acre zoning regulations. So the proximity of an existing water and wastewater was something that said, well, not only could you do it decentralized, but you could also look at partnering with your neighboring community to extend a water and wastewater system there. So that was one of the things that we looked at. We are going to close the public comment period right now of our public hearing.
Do you need a motion for that?
Yes, we'll do it by the book, yes.
Okay, hearing nobody else saying, wanting to make a comment. I will move that the public hearing on the draft zoning bylaw will be closed.
Second,
Sounded reluctant.
all right,
Any other discussion?
Why not continue if we're gonna change the bylaw in reaction to these comments? Why don't we continue it to a certain time so we can have another meeting on the revised bylaw?
Because we haven't gotten to the revised bylaw, whether or not we were voting on or out of the bylaw at this point. So we're just closing the public hearing comments for this public hearing tonight.
But you're gonna vote whether you're moving it to the select board tonight.
That's
On the
potential.
agenda.
If
It's on the
they,
agenda.
if we get a motion on it, I will.
Okay.
Accept
Then
it,
we should
yeah,
stick around.
yeah, definitely.
Okay.
But that's to be decided by the planning commission, definitely.
I can let you know if you haven't been back.
Tell me again, Nathan, why do you want to close
Excuse me, we have a motion on the floor, Mr. Chair.
where we discussion?
We have
Is there any further discussion on the motion?
to close the hearing.
To close the public comments for the public hearing tonight,
Is that just for the public hearing tonight?
correct?
Is that with the intention of giving to the select people this bylaw as standing?
Not at this point, we're just closing the comments for the public hearing that we're holding tonight.
What are we gonna do with the comments?
The comments are.
That's
next on
item
the
number
agenda.
4 on the agenda.
Yes.
Malcolm?
Well, I don't wanna close the meeting until I know what you're gonna do with the
We're
comments.
not, we're not closing the meeting, we're just closing
We're
the
closing the
comments.
hearing. Yeah, I know that,
Okay,
but I'd like to know what is gonna happen next. other than just discussing that.
Thank you, Paul. If you guys do
If you want-
have another meeting, could we make extra copies and then town clerk where you can come get them? It's a lot.
Yeah.
There's
We have-
one, and it's at office.
Yeah, but Jesse was making
Yeah,
copies.
we were-
Oh, okay, all right, yeah, just.
Do you wanna take this one with you?
Yeah, you can.
Oh,
yeah,
absolutely.
Okay, all right, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm going off, but,
Yeah, yeah, no, that's what, yeah, that's why I suggested. you-
okay, all right, yeah.
It makes it
thank
a
you.
lot easier.
Definitely, thank you. Any other discussion on the motion to close the public comments
Public hearing.
or
Public
close the
hearing.
public hearing, sorry. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Welcome,
I don't wanna close it.
you don't wanna close the
You're
public
voting
hearing?
no?
I wanna continue.
Alright.
The motion passes 3-1. Malcolm, opposed. Next on our agenda for the Braintree Planning Commission is to review the public hearing comments.
Is everybody remembering?
So one of the first things was trying to identify what we've received for public comments over the course of us working on this. And we had a matrix that we were working through, and let's see if I can get this correct. What we did during our regular meetings over the past 8 or 9 months is we took 9 months now. We took those comments and we went line by line and went through those. And as a planning commission, we tried to reconcile the changes and the recommended changes, which resulted in the draft bylaw that you see today. So each one of those conditions that or questions that we can make available and put up onto the website. And we have the list of individuals here today, and we can make that available to everybody. That's fine, we can certainly do that. But we did methodically go down one by one by one by one and went through all of those. And based in most of those, we actually voted whether or not we thought it was viable or not viable to include the edits in the town plan. I can specifically say the discussion on rural 1 versus rural scenic. The definitions there, the interpretation and the support from the planning commission was to preserve the rural character of those sections of town that are identified on the future land use map. It was the belief of our planning commission that having smaller 5-6 acre lots was not conducive to maintaining those rural scenic areas. Which goes to the idea of what defines what a scenic asset is, right? And I think that was a very clear question tonight that we received of how do you define that and how do you bring that up to the development review board? I think it's a valid point that we need to consider.
Well, let's just address that. Because it's a question of whether or not a zoning ordinance bylaw is supposed to be so overly specific that it covers every possible contingency related to that concern. Or whether or not it is to say that reasonable people on a development review board have the ability and the responsibility to use their judgment on these matters. Because it's basically impossible to anticipate every possible circumstance and put into the zoning ordinance specific language around every specific possibility. So it's a question of judgment. And that is what a development review board is set up to do, to exercise judgment.
Do you feel that we need to have more specificity in what the definition of a scenic character is or a scenic trait, defining what that is in our bylaw at this point?
I don't see how we can. I don't see how we can, because the scenic character of a tree or of a view may depend very much upon the circumstance and where the tree is located or the view. I just don't see how you can possibly go there. I think that's why you have site visits, all right? And their site visits are required so that the Development Review Board and other people can go and see what is being requested, by actually looking on at the site, what the implications of that request might entail.
Much of that scenic is associated with vegetation.
For lack of, are you saying?
Or it's not scenic if it's lack of vegetation, in my opinion.
So you're saying if I have a beautiful view of Braintree Range from a resident in a rural one district. Compared to my neighbor that could cut down trees, because his trees are up, they are more scenic than the one that doesn't have trees?
Yeah. Collectively, it's more scenic area.
So
People
I think
pay
you
for
just
that.
proved Paul's point.
What?
I mean, but let's talk about trees. Are we talking about a tree that it's a 1 inch
Or is it a
diameter stem, or are we talking about a tree that's 1.5 feet in diameter? Are we talking about a tree that's 6 months old or a tree that's 300 years old and dying? I mean, you can't go there, folks.
Or is it the view?
Yeah, or is it, and yes, but the view changes depending upon the age and the size of the tree.
Yeah.
I mean, you just can't go into that kind of detail in the zoning ordinance. You have to have a degree of judgment and say, because remember, this part of the scenic is the character not only of this particular lot, but of everything that's around it. Right? Okay, and everything around it is different for every particular lot. So you have to use judgment. You have to use judgment here. And within the guidance that the town plan has said that we cherish, certain things and, okay.
Mhm.
How do you live with that goal of the town plan? Okay,
Mhm.
again, it's a question of judgment and it's balanced because sometimes you say, well, if we are not gonna sacrifice this, we have to sacrifice something else in order to be able to accomplish the objective. And those trade-offs, again, are judgments that the Development Review Board is entitled and expected to make.
I wanna just be cognizant of time and everybody's ability to talk through some of these, but we do have a couple other
Yeah.
questions, and if it's okay with the planning commission, I'd like to allow folks to speak.
No, this is just us.
Okay.
This is, the hearing and the comments are closed.
Okay, thank
This
you.
is just us.
Even if we had a suggestion,
You could send it by mail or email to us, but the public part of
but if we
this
have a clear
conversation,
idea of what other towns have done, you don't care to hear it right now?
not right now,
Okay, that's good.
because we have to make a judgment at this point.
And you're gonna be making, all right, that's
Okay?
interesting.
Still ask questions.
We're
So
still-
we can still make a comment. I guess
You can't
my-
just shut it down.
we're trying to like make it, what it sounds like is we're even muddying it even further, basically saying, well, there's really no difference. It is in the eye of the beholder of what is scenic, and that's the whole
It's-
point.
It's in the eye of the majority of the Development Review Board, not of any
But
single.
is that Braintree? The DRB is 5 people.
We need to keep it
That's-
focused. I understand that there's some,
I just have one
Very-
quick, that would solve it. It would take me 2 seconds to say it.
I'm.
One
willing to
1,000,
take-
2 1,000.
Paul,
I haven't
please,
opened my mouth yet.
yeah, please,
So-
please be civil and allow.
Yeah,
As
this is
the
really,
chair, I would
I'm
like
gonna
to-
leave here. I'm not coming to any more of these meetings. It's real. This
I
is the
just want,
down and.
I wanna recognize Paul as
Oh,
the
what are you trying
chair.
to protect? If you're trying to protect the
Not,
Braintree,
oh, sorry, you're both named Paul.
yes, if you're trying to protect the Braintree Mountain Range, that's what the scenic resources is. If you're trying to protect that. Everything else is that, it's gonna be really justifiable. Or towards the interstate and stuff, if you're on the perch of Braintree Hill, or if you're going out by falls and stuff. If it's the Braintree Mountain Range you're trying to protect, make that.
I think that was, yeah,
Make that the view you're trying to protect. and
I
stay
appreciate that, and that was
Not go to
the comment that we were considering was.
Thank you.
How to define what that scenic piece is, and whether it's objective or subjective.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you,
And
I don't know how you do that.
I don't know how to address that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my point being is that though, again, it's so. It's, to me, when I look at other towns' bylaws, we are the only one that has this. Dilemma that we're creating with ourselves here because we want to protect everything, and I understand that, but. We're refusing to have any real change in that because we wanna just call them the same thing when they're not. I mean, you drive around Braintree, how many houses are just falling around everywhere? Like, who cares about a tree? Let's look at our houses, let's look at everything else around us. It's not just scenic, it's everything.
So we're limited to just what the town can control, right? And so.
Understand this, I
so-
mean, but my point is like, we're talking about it in terms of like.
So the
can't
town-
control a
The
tree.
town plan identifies what we feel as valuable as being scenic. What the actions are to protect those areas, including the conservation areas or those scenic areas. So the challenge that the planning commission had was trying to match the actions to preserve some of those areas that we were identified in the town plan as scenic. And that doesn't just extend to the Braintree Range, as Paul Ray was just mentioning. There are other areas in town that are scenic too. So we appreciate, this is a reiteration of what we've heard earlier, and this is why we're trying to deliberate on and review those public hearing comments as the planning commission. So appreciate everybody's thoughtfulness. One of the things that was also brought up was how did affordability get considered in the zoning updates? And I think we've addressed this multiple times as a planning commission on where are the best areas to support dense, more feasible areas to develop. People had mentioned, how is it possible to develop in certain areas versus soils and et cetera. Those are based on, again, the state statutes and threading the needle for our planning commission to identify what was statutorily required for us. And so we tried to look at that in ways to make things more affordable. We're looking at being able to not just look at the cost of development as far as the specific upfront costs, but also the cost of being able to extend electricity utilities out through a rural area to a far off place. So looking at the design and the requirements for a private driveway versus a private road or access to a planned subdivision that's going to have multiple units versus a house that's going to be up in a rural scenic area on its own or a camp on its own. So we tried to look at those scenarios and how they would be applied in various zoning districts. The formatting issues, Lou, we talked about those and we appreciate the comments on being able to look into that. And Paul,
Lou, you will give us the 8 editorial ones.
we just talked about deleting rural scenic and scenic characteristic. That was something that was brought up by Lou as well. And
Well, let's talk about that. Which one was that?
we were just talking about the characteristics, that's where we got into.
Which section?
Page 55, it was right before we got into the section. So,
And let me just make sure with.
and we just kind of talked about that, so if you all have some consideration that you would like to think about on deleting rural scenic.
Well, he
And
wasn't
scenic
suggesting, as
characteristic.
I believe, he was not suggesting
Specific,
deleting all of A, but just the within the rural scenic district. Deleting that. Development scenic resources, development shall be located and configured to avoid undue adverse impacts. Forget the size, see sidebar, to the scenic character of the area. I'm I'll just put that on the floor. I would, move that we, accept, that edit to, section 6.5 E subparagraph A.
Nathan, if I.
What was that again, Paul?
Can, I'm going to defer to our consultant to give me a little bit of guidance here on this.
I would highly recommend having a parameter within which the DRB can work. And I think that's why putting in the rural scenic district, it became that parameter is a map thing that the DRB can look at and evaluate what is scenic, because Paul, as you mentioned, it can be anything and everything, and that
Right.
makes it somewhat arbitrary, which you isn't a place you want to be.
This limits it to that zoning district.
It does, and you can define it differently, but I highly recommend that you define it.
So,
So you're saying that we should have scenic consideration only in the scenic district and not in any other district when we have a conditional use event?
I'm saying that if you have scenic consideration, you define what that consideration is. It
I'm
doesn't have
fine
to
with
be-
that, even though the state doesn't do that when it does it under Act 250, right? I mean, the state has scenic considerations that it uses all the time, and boards consider it, they use their judgment, et cetera. But this language says that we in Braintree, when considering a conditional use, will consider scenic resources only within the rural scenic district. Is that your intention?
Where does it say that?
What I'm saying is.
6.5, section E subsection
I
A.
didn't catch that.
What I'm saying is, you don't have to use the rural scenic district, you can use another parameter. I just.
So it's not using the rural, are you looking at the language, just read that. Grammatically.
Yeah, it's saying as scenic resources, it's saying that the development within the rural scenic district shall be located, configured.
but
To
only,
avoid undue adverse impacts of the scenic character of the area, so. You will want to. I think you'll want to revise the language here.
Well-
It doesn't have to be the rural scenic district.
Right, we wanna consider scenic consideration.
If you're expanding it outside of that.
All the rest,
the
none of the
scenic
rest,
character,
none of the rest of the criteria mention any district. Because it's a conditional use, we apply the same criteria, whether it's conservation, rural scenic, rural one, village district, anything. This is the only one that references rural scenic.
So if I had this written down correctly, when you provide the comment, if we deleted the word rural scenic district.
Yeah.
The name doesn't
And
say it.
Please hold
I'm
on,
golden.
and apply it to all conditional use permits required.
You don't have to, from as far as I'm concerned, just get rid of the words rural scenic district. And also see sidebar, since there's no sidebar anymore. Which is,
I think you can call any district you want, but what by some title. But whether it's not in other districts. Or only limited, see,
So if we were to read this as scenic resources,
where are you reading from?
section
Again?
6.5.
I don't think,
Subsection-
I don't think that term should only
Can you
apply to
wait
rural
for-
scenic.
No, that's what he just said. So development. Shall be located and configured to avoid undue adverse impacts to the scenic character of
the area.
the development or area. Of the area, don't change anything, so again, it would be development. Shall be located and configured to avoid undue adverse impacts to the scenic character of the area.
That was my motion.
That was your motion. So we have a motion on the table to change that section, again, it's 6.5, section E subsection A. removing development within the rural scenic district. And replacing with development shall be located and configured to avoid undue adverse impacts to the scenic character of the area.
Is there a second to my motion?
Second,
Oh, it has been seconded. Okay.
Where's the sidebar?
Is there any further discussion? There is no sidebar anymore. We're taking that out.
Sidebar.
Yes, we're taking that out too, sorry.
Yep.
Yeah,
Any
I
other
don't think, I
discussion?
think that is the criteria, the emphasis is on scenic quality
Mhm.
in that area. But it shouldn't be limited to that area,
That's what
that's
the
what the
motion is
motion,
for.
that's what the motion before you.
but then you shouldn't change it necessarily. The name of that district, because that's where the emphasis is, but there should be applied to other areas.
That's
We-
what,
that's what this will
the
happen.
motion does.
Yes,
Yeah, these are general.
I should not,
It applies, it now applies to all districts. Under my motion.
yeah, it,
read it again,
I will read it. Development shall be located and configured to avoid undue adverse impacts to the scenic character of the area.
yeah, I go with that, I didn't understand it.
I will call a vote then. All in
Aye.
favor?
Aye.
Malcolm?
Yeah, I'm for it.
Thank you. Yeah. We got one thing done on that, all right? Yeah,
Did the chair vote?
I didn't have to. But yes, I'm in favor of this.
Lou, what was your
If I had
second?
to break a vote, I was.
I guess I would add some.
Lou, what was your second one?
The second was don't allow the.
No, wait a minute, give us the.
7.3, don't allow the development review board to waive the specific subdivision waivers.
Lou, I would ask if you could defer the discussion of that one to the discussion of my. Which is in the
Yep,
same
yep.
vein, because I have specific language, okay?
8.2 was the other thing that we had tonight. I also just want to reiterate that we have gone through the public forum comments and addressed those in the current draft, so we're not going to follow up on those directly tonight. We have the draft version, what we can make available, and we can give you all of the list of issues that we've addressed, but under 8.2, the development review board, don't allow a waiver of dimensional requirements.
No place, is it defined dimensional requirement?
Excuse me?
Is dimensional requirement in the definitions refined any place?
It's under section 8.2. So let me go there, so. I
That'd
can read.
be page 82.
So under 8.2,
No, it would be in the,
Under
It's
the-
not in the definitions.
it's not. That's where it should be.
no,
No,
this is talking about allowing a waiver of those dimensional
Yeah, but
requirements.
what's the dimensional requirement?
It's
Well,
identified in each zoning
any,
district.
there is a chart in here under each, under the.
Yeah, but it's different in different places. Is that the setback a dimensional requirement?
Setback is a dimensional requirement.
Is the area of a building dimensional requirement?
I mean, internal,
What?
number of square feet of the building
Footprint.
as a percentage. As a percentage of the lot.
That's a dimension?
Yep, defer to Kyle on that.
Yeah, but that, I mean, it's not something you really waive, that you're waiving a requirement, and otherwise, a requirement that you otherwise have to comply with it. So you're not really waiving.
I'd like to see a hard definition of dimension. In the bylaw. If you would. And then we can agree on where it applies.
Chair.
Lou, you're being very patient, thank you.
Well, my concern on this dimensional requirement is that it allows the DRB to waive lot size
That's right.
requirement.
That's right.
And so if we're gonna put a definition in, which I think is possible, Malcolm, and a good idea, it might get tricky, because in some cases you want it to include, and in others
Yeah.
not. So, but my concern relative to this is that it allows the DRB to waive lot size.
I don't
which is
think
a
so. I don't
dimensional
think-
Can I put
requirement.
an example out there? If I had a 15-acre lot and I wanted to subdivide it into 2 acres and I was in a rural.
No, because the first sentence here says, there are times when for specific reasons, a proposed use cannot fit. It cannot fit.
A permitted or conditional
So
use,
if you've got a 15-acre
but
lot,
because
it's
of
thick.
wetlands. Let's just use that. Because of state wetlands, you can't develop. Where you need to put in a septic system.
Then why wouldn't you? See,
What's your
No,
problem with us allowing it for specific reasons? I see the problem being that what the hell are those specific reasons?
yeah, what are the specific, that makes sense.
So, by not allowing them to waive those.
That's where I'm having the problem with Lou's suggestion, because I'm not. It seems to me that this is written so that, you have to demonstrate that your lot cannot be used for the purpose that is a permitted use. And this is under subdivision, this is not under conditional use, this is under, okay? And if under a subdivision, why would you subdivide? I guess I just don't see. I'm just I'm having trouble, and part of my trouble, Lou, is that I have approached the solution to this problem from a different direction. And that's why I've asked that we defer the discussion of this until we get to.
Well, it's not related to subdivision, this is just general waiver language.
No, that's the problem, that's my problem, see, I'm approaching this as, this is that the,
8.2 is.
yeah.
Waivers and
It
variances.
is waivers and variances, and I was approaching it from the subdivision side.
Okay.
Thank you.
The variance stems from a US Supreme Court decision as to what really is a variance, and there are 4 conditions which are not very clear here. It's a waiver of a dimension, and that's not clear here. So the variance and waiver is different. And it has to be a natural condition, can be a waiver. The buyer of that lot has to, it has to be evident. In other words, if there's solid rock under the lot, he didn't know it when he bought the lot, then he could get a waiver.
Are you talking about waivers or variances?
I'm variance, sorry.
Yeah, I'm saying, yeah, we're talking about waivers, not variances.
It's waivers
I thought
and
8.2 is what we.
Waivers
Oh, waivers, yeah,
and
yeah,
variance.
right.
I just wanna point out, if you continue to read this, you need to read the whole paragraph together, you can't separate the sentences, right? So.
Which paragraph, 8.2.1 or 8?
8.2. There are times when for specific reasons a proposed use cannot fit the requirements of a permitted or conditional use. This regulation allows for such unusual development, but only within certain bounds through the process that follows. Development that is already a non-conforming use due to valid land uses that predate this bylaw may be changed with approval from the Development Review Board only.
What do you
as
mean by
outlined-
change? Let's change.
Please let me finish.
Sure.
Only as outlined below. Applicants for new development that only needs a dimensional change from the established standards, such as a reduction in setback, may be able to get a waiver. These are issued by the administrative officer, not the Development Review Board.
The development.
No, it says by the administrative officer for certain conditions and the Development Review Board for others. What are those others, right?
For some,
So there's some ambiguity there.
Well, no, elsewhere in
That's not-
elsewhere in the ordinance.
Applicants for development that cannot get a waiver and that cannot be permitted in strict conformance with the bylaw. May be able to get a variance from the Development Review Board after meeting
That's
a
not
rigorous 5-part test. I would suggest that there is enough disagreement and questions amongst our specific planning commission. that we need to table this discussion on this.
I would agree.
Section and bring this under advisement at our next board meeting.
Okay,
I'm open to a motion to accept a specific change at this point for us to consider. If there is not a motion, I would recommend that we try to develop some clear language on section 8.2 that we're in agreement before we pass this on to the select board.
Lou, are you gonna offer specific
No, I'm
language?
asking for the planning commission. If there's public comments that want to be considered by the planning commission, they can be submitted by writing or at our next meeting.
Thank you.
So we've also. I'd like to move on because I don't think I have a motion on the floor for any changes to that section.
All right. So,
We talked about rural one versus rural scenic and what those were and how extending village area through the neighborhood residential area that we propose in the future land use map. The reason why we cannot do a village extension into where we've set the neighborhood residential area as a proposed zoning district, which is a new zoning district in our bylaws, is it doesn't meet the definition of what a village center designation would be. The state statutes that confine a definition of currently a village center versus a designated downtown or a designated neighborhood area restrict us from being able to extend it and encouraging what would be considered strip development and sprawl development along 12A. The very differences between a village center and a neighborhood residential area are specifically the neighborhood residential area is only for housing and home occupation businesses, home enterprises. A village center allows for commercial development and mixed use development within that village center. The very definition of a village center is it has commercial, residential, civic and governmental, even religious opportunities in those areas. By restricting it to this southern section specifically and not further up 12A, it allows residential units to go further up 12A, but it prevents commercial expansion outside of the village district that we've identified.
Does it specifically say that in the bylaws, like, cause I don't think the word commercial is anywhere in there.
I believe if you look at the definition of the allowed permitted uses for the neighborhood residential area, it does say that only residential, primary residential units or rental units or that type of thing are
Yes.
allowed there.
Mhm.
So I do believe it.
Takes out the commercial.
No, I'm not asking if it takes out the commercial.
No, it specifically states that this is an allowable use there.
Yes, but.
Conditional
so-
uses that kind of goes into the waiver.
Yeah, I guess
and
this is
stuff
just
like
a
that.
general question about the
State statute.
village area then,
Yeah.
right? Cause you said that that is where it's defined as
Yeah.
commercial uses allowed. I don't think that's actually in the bylaws. I don't think that says that you can develop commercial things under that without a conditional use. I don't think that's specifically there.
I would definitely need to go and read that section again.
It's probably still, I don't have.
It is,
commercial, I don't have the-
4.8.2 conditional uses within the village district. Conditional use is a commercial use.
Yeah, and that's,
So
that's.
conditional use is just
condition.
considered commercial, or commercial considered conditional
Paul,
throughout anywhere in
Can you
Braintree.
look at
We
the
are not
neighborhood
defining any
section?
place in Braintree that allows commercial use without a conditional use permit.
And that's pretty common with a lot of towns that are similar size. Braintree, it's just pretty standard practice. It's gonna be a larger development and it's something that
Oops, skipped over.
the zoning administrator probably would not be comfortable just issuing a permit for.
Yeah, so I
I
found
have a
it,
question for you.
it's not, yeah, commercial is not a conditional use.
I have
in
a
the
lot more
neighborhood.
comment.
And then
So you can, it's not permitted.
It's
In the
not a
neighborhood.
it's not, yeah,
It's not.
that's what I'm saying, it's taken out, it was. taken
Yeah, that
out.
was never my question
Yeah,
about that. That was, it was
Yeah,
a
that's
question
why I said
of
it.
where.
Yeah.
Commercial development was allowed. in Braintree.
It is allowed within a village district
Yes.
as a conditional use.
Okay,
It's allowed in a rural district.
yes, it's very gray,
It's,
basically.
yeah. there's definitions that we tried to clean up as well as what the difference between an enterprise, home enterprise versus a commercial enterprise would be and how that's defined by it and how the development review board would
Is that in the definition section, or is that like when you're looking at
think that's where
home
we,
enterprise?
so
itself?
there, I believe there's the
The big
definition.
the big distinction is that a commercial use has to be on a highway,
Okay.
not, okay, not on a town road, but on a paved highway.
That's specific.
I'm pretty sure that's, I'm pretty sure that's.
I don't remember seeing anything like that ever. Is there?
Why is it that we are picking certain areas in the bylaw?
To discuss right now is we're looking at the comments that we received.
Why you never, and you're going to only look at those comments?
These are the comments that we received tonight, and as part of our agenda, it was to review those comments.
So I didn't get a chance to put all my comments in.
Mike,
Do you see
the
the
definition of
definitions?
So
commercial.
what happens?
What happens?
With the
My comments are.
You submitted your comments,
Right.
you submitted your comments by email. So your comments are part of our record.
I didn't submit all my comments by email. There's a lot more I've done.
And you didn't ask to be recognized for
Yes, I
additional
did.
comments.
You shut me off.
Malcolm,
What?
I'm going to suggest that if there are additional comments that you may want to make, we've already closed that period of the public hearing.
But
Do
you
you
said
have-
we would get comments after that public hearing somehow.
Do you have them in writing?
I have them like that in my.
No, you would have to make them in writing so that either the planning commission or the select board could consider them. You can't say, you can't simply say they're in my notes to my own.
Why not? That's in writing.
You haven't submitted it to us.
I didn't have a chance.
You haven't submitted it to us. You could submit it to us, but it has to be in writing.
That's
Can I
in
suggest
writing.
that we're getting to the point of the meeting where we're not being productive?
Thank you.
And that additional comments will be accepted throughout our next regular planning commission meeting. Comments are able to be considered by the planning commission and the select board.
So I can,
You
what
have
does
the,
in writing mean to you?
I would like them in an email form so we can provide them. And you have a copy of them to see that we've been in receipt of them, but if this is how you need to get them to us. That's how,
Well,
I
it has to be
can-
part
I
of the
can put
public
it in-
record.
I can put it in email if that's,
It has to be a part.
I'm willing to take them any form you can, because I don't wanna reduce the opportunity for somebody to provide comments.
But they have to be
There
in a
are numerous-
form that can be part of a public record, which means something that can be duplicatable.
I mean, we could,
and
we
give it
could
to others.
scan, we could.
So if
scan
you
these
want, if
in.
he wants to scan that and send it to us, that's fine.
or I'll put
not
it
our
in
job
an
to
email
do
to
it.
you and reference the paragraph or the page, right?
Mm. I don't think we're gonna be able to get through all these comments tonight.
Well, I thought we were gonna do all the comments next week. That's why. I was
We're
asking.
reviewing the comments that we received, that was on the agenda, so. I will defer to the rest of the planning commission on how they would like to proceed.
I mean, my feeling is, we're not gonna get through all of these comments, and so maybe Kyle can tell us what our options are, we can.
And are
Vote
these,
the plan out with all these comments attached and hand it over to the select board in a big pile, or?
I would make the comments, or I would make changes based on the comments.
are these substantial changes that would require us to hold another public hearing before we send it to the select board?
No.
Or can we make those changes? Based on the comments that we've received and will receive between now and our next planning commission meeting.
Yeah, there's no rush to make any of these
Perfect.
changes.
That's helpful, I don't like being rushed.
So you can make them at the next meeting, I mean, I've seen. Towns have a planning commission hearing and then make changes over the next couple of months or.
But you do have to, in terms of the clock for the select board concluding its action by the end of this year, we have a limited, more
goal.
limited period of time.
So the only constraint is that there is a 10% for the grant,
Mhm.
there is a 10% match, and that's forgiven if the bylaws subsequent, the draft bylaw is adopted
By the
in
end of the grant
by the
term.
end of the grant term. So there's that 10% match that the town can recoup.
Right.
Which is,
In terms of statutory requirement, after the final planning commission public hearing, if this is it, then the select board has a year to adopt, so they'd have until next October.
if we do not vote the draft bylaw forward for the approval by the select board tonight. That timeline does not start, is that correct?
The.
The 1 year timeline.
The 1 year timeline does start.
It starts the date of our first public hearing?
The date of the final planning commission public hearing.
Okay, so if we choose to. So we close the public hearing. We're considering the comments now.
You could take 4 or 5 months, transmit it to the select board, at which point they'd have 6-ish months to
Okay.
adopt, because we held the hearing in October.
Okay, but if we say in October that we need more opportunity to hear the public provide comments and we wanna have a second public hearing. Does that timeline then change?
Yeah, it's the
Okay.
final public hearing, so if we held another public hearing, that would be
Okay,
where the clock
I
starts.
don't wanna. Shoestring our select board into like, you have to approve this within a year.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't get approved by the select board within that year. Does it automatically
Goes back to
go
you.
back to us?
Yeah.
And then we have to start that process over again?
At that point, you have a draft,
Mhm.
and hopefully it doesn't take a year to adopt. I've only ever seen that happen once. And so
Okay.
you can, but you would have to hold another public hearing.
Yep.
And it would largely be on the same draft, probably,
Okay.
you submitted.
A question and 2 brief comments. The brief comments are, number 1, I don't think the select board will have any trouble acting on whatever you give them within a year. The second observation is that it felt like there might be a little heat, there might have been a little heat in the room today, and so the possibility of you having a second public hearing could maybe,
I'll just add this to my own personal comments on the heat that you're referencing. They're the same comments we've received from the public forum until now.
I think it was about.
And they're from
not
the
being
same,
heard.
and they're from the same individuals. And unfortunately, not being heard is a perspective from the individual and maybe not the planning commission.
Understood.
I
So,
think they feel it's not accepted.
Yeah, I don't feel that, but I understand your point.
you know,
My
so-
question is,
yeah,
when does the 10% kick in?
the 10% kicks in if we don't have the select board adopt the town zoning bylaws by December 31st.
Why is that deadline?
Because that's the grant term.
For the grant, but we can go on
We
without.
could ask for an extension of that.
No, you can't.
No?
No,
You
they,
can always go to your grantor and ask for. an
They're not gonna give it to you.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that. You know that?
Yes,
Okay,
yeah, they're going to tell us.
okay, great, I don't know.
The grant term, it's specifically laid out, we have the grant agreement, and I would recommend reading it as the select board member. It's there, and it's spelled out.
What makes you think you couldn't call them and ask them? Like, have you had experience with that grantor?
Yes,
Okay, then you have more experience than I do, so
Well,
that's all.
Lyle, maybe you could address that.
I mean, I did double check, and it's on the website, there are no time extensions for the grant, the grant's been sunset.
Okay, great, all right, got it, thank you.
Well,
Thank you.
I respect Kyle's, what he's done and the necessity to have him. But we can amend what is there without necessarily having his okay on
yeah, he's just there for guidance to help us make
But we
sure.
don't want the town to pay an extra 10%.
I
What?
would say,
Well, that's my point. That's my point. if he's speaking as a select board member.
I'm just speaking as a guy.
Okay,
So
then we don't wanna pay that extra 10%. And if that's gonna be the guidance from the select board, then the guidance to us is, folks, we gotta get cracking here, okay?
Because they have to warn it publicly and hold their hearing.
Exactly.
So
And do that.
in that case, my recommendation is I've taken notes
Would-
down.
Rather than having a conversation with
I
one
was
person,
thinking
if you would. Thank you.
I've taken notes down so I can get to work to a certain extent, especially with the just grammatical stuff. I mean, obviously, when you accept all in track changes, there's going to be some weird things that are just there, like numbering issues and whatnot. So all that cleaning can just start to happen right away. If there are specific questions that you have between now and the next plan commission meeting that I can help to answer. You can send me a list of those and I can just go through one by one and give my feedback based on if it's a statutory thing or language that you might want to incorporate. And that way you can be kind of up and running at the next meeting. Because if it's gonna be an incredibly tight timeline either way, even if you transmit it to the select board in October.
So what you're saying is that my comments, when I get them in writing, should go to both all the planning commission and to you. And how do we decide if they're right or not? Both right.
In October, the October meeting, you.
That's the
Should
next
we
meeting.
consider a special meeting?
It has to be warned, what, 48 hours in advance?
24, right?
Or is it 24?
Special meeting.
Special meeting.
I mean,
Either
you
way.
could in 2 weeks hold a special meeting.
Yeah,
if you're
yeah.
not- Right.
Why don't,
I just think that this is gonna be such a bear because
You're not gonna make everybody happy.
yeah, we're not gonna make everybody, but we have to be able to set it up and say, and vote on them up or down. If you just go down the list and vote on them up or down. But I think even so, we're gonna have to need to have adequate discussion around each one before we vote. And so I would suggest that we seriously consider having a special meeting of the planning commission to focus just, the only agenda item being to review, and to act on these comments.
We got one comment out of the way.
That's right.
We did good.
I agree with Paul.
So,
I think it's a good.
I'll take small wins, right?
I have a question for Kyle.
Yeah. But I think
In a single unit. It's not family unit, it's a single dwelling unit. If I remember the court case, Supreme Court case, there's no limit on the number or relationship between the members. Is that the result of that case?
See why there should be, that would get murky very quickly.
Yeah, what?
I wouldn't really know where you go with that, if you're limiting the number.
Well, is that, you don't know that court case?
already.
No, in typically in definitions for dwelling unit. It's, or household, it's a a certain number of people that live together as a single housekeeping unit.
Well,
That's.
I would buy your argument, but there's a court case on it, I believe, you don't know.
Alright.
I didn't want to get to Nathan, there might be.
Quick question,
Yes,
sorry.
sir.
I need to interrupt real quick.
He never said.
Next select board meeting is next week.
So no, we just had our
Second.
second,
Okay.
first Tuesday of October.
October, yeah.
Okay.
So if we had it in 2 weeks, we could be in front of your,
2 weeks is October 2nd. Is that?
Okay.
Well, and this might be useful for you, I'd have to go back and check, but we did bylaw harmonization
Yeah.
consortium several years ago, and if I recall, one of the towns was able to adopt in January, because it was final documentation. Well, it was warned, but the final documentation isn't due until the end of January.
You have a 30-day.
So there might be a little bit more.
Off the record, I think we're gonna be okay.
We're still
You
recording.
guys are doing something in 2 weeks. We move it forward, we get it at the latest.
I
We
also
get it at
just
the
wanna
latest
reiterate that
in
this,
November.
this can be
No.
changed.
That's-
I'm just saying, the latest we get it in November, we warn it, we act on it in December, we're in.
By the end of December, yeah.
It needs to be warned 15 days in advance of, so we have to have it to you all no later than the second, by the 14th of December. If we can't warn it by the 14th, or the select board can't warn it by the 14th and hold.
Yeah,
the
but
public hearing.
you're not gonna hold a public hearing on the 29th of December, just, come on, guys.
How about
Why are
25th?
we talking that, when you're having a meeting on September 29th or whatever it's gonna be, and
October, I recommend, I'll make a motion that we have a special meeting on the night of Thursday, October 2nd.
Second.
There you go.
Okay.
October 7th,
October 2nd, 2 weeks from now.
Or
Okay,
second.
yes, and it's been seconded.
In
What
terms
day of the
of
week is that?
discussion,
Thursday?
I will compile my list into the spreadsheet, and then once we feel good about it, we'll send it to you for comments. And we'll work to get Malcolm's comments in as well, and we'll have that document to work from at the meeting.
That'd be great, yeah, and it's maybe next week.
Yeah, I'll get it this weekend. I'll work on it this week.
Well, the more
October
specific the
2nd.
comments are in terms of recommend of what the language should be, the narrower the conversation becomes.
Okay, so October 2nd, special meeting for the Braintree Planning Commission, and there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? A list will be developed and compiled from our comments that we have tonight, as well to be added to the comments that we've received in writing, by email, or by script, or by letter. However it is, we will track it the best that we can to make sure we're doing it. Excuse me?
smoke signal.
Do you need a,
We'll
mo-
take those two at this point. You just
Okay.
tell me what they mean though, okay? Are we going with like the Morse code, dot, dot, dot?
Flag waving.
okay,
So, any further discussions? None, thank you. All in favor,
aye,
October 2nd, we will have a special meeting, any opposed? Okay,
I voted on.
I vote aye as well. The motion passes. We will have an October 2nd meeting to continue the discussion of the comments in the draft bylaws. And I really appreciate everybody sticking with me tonight, and
What,
I'm barely sticking at the.
I'm working on
Good
it.
night.
I was trying, Lou. I'm trying my best.
As this is a bear, I mean.
In York City.
Shouldn't sit there.
Did I do okay? Did I do alright from your perspective though?
Huh?
The best I could?
Yes.
Thank you, that's all I asked for.
We need to close our meeting.
We also do need to close the meeting. We had a few other things on our agenda though, Jackson.
Yeah, we have
I-
vote, which we tabled.
We
or we're not
tabled
gonna
that
vote.
one.
we haven't finished the
We're not gonna do
review.
any additional business.
Okay,
So, I vote that we adjourn.
I have a motion to adjourn by fall.
Second.
You want-
Jackson, all in
Aye.
favor,
Aye.
thank you so much.
Yeah. Linda, you're wonderful,
At 9:30.
not only to stay through the whole thing, but to bring, now what happened to your little container of, yeah.
Those were really good, thank you so
I'm gonna
much.
take one more, well, out the door.
I'm not gonna say no, thank you so much, I was so sad that I didn't.
I only four to get home.
I'll take one more. Thank you.
Oh.
I baked cookies for the road